Soul Series podcast, and we're back with another episode. Today, we're doing something different. We're just going to be discussing, there's some questions that I thought would be interesting for people who are maybe getting into Krishna consciousness or who got into it and then have doubts. Like, people have many doubts, like, why this, why that,
Sure.
and I thought this would be the perfect opportunity for, somebody like Supriya Chechi to answer these questions because she has the uh, she has a relative experience and everything, so to be able to go through it. So hi Vijay, like, yeah. How are
Okay.
you?
Hi, Hare Krishna, Jai
Hare
Shri
Krishna.
Prabhupada. I
Jai Shri
can
Prabhupada.
try, and if my answers are not complete, I can always go back and think about it or look up something
Yeah,
else and then like supplement a top of the answer, to you privately. So you want to do your prayers first because
yeah,
yeah.
we'll do that. ओम ज्ञानतिमिरन्दस्य ज्ञानञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरुवे नमः श्रीचैतन्यो मनोभीष्टं स्थापितं येन भूतले स्वयं रूपा कदा मायं ददाति स्वापदान्तिकम् हे कृष्ण करुण सिन्धु दीनबन्धु जगत्पते गोपेश गोपिकान्ता राधाकान्ता नमोऽस्तुते तप्त कंचन गौरंगी राधे वृंदावनेश्वरी ऋषभानुसुति देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये वंशाकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्यैव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः नमो ओं विष्णुपादाय कृष्णपृष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमती भक्तिवेदांत स्वामी इति नामिने नमस्ते सरस्वती देवी गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्यदेशतारिणे श्रीकृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंदा श्री अद्वैता गदाधर श्रीवसादि गौरभक्तवृंदा हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे जय बाबा हरे कृष्ण.
Okay. Okay. Shoot, Siddharth. I mean,
So,
what's your first question?
these are not like anything related to like a story like that, but it's like
Yeah, yeah.
general questions like that. So the first one I would say is like, how does one balance the principles and values of Krishna Bhakti and but also engage in the material world? So,
Okay, so there are two things. There are the principles and then there are the details.
hmm,
So if you, in any situation, the details are there for us to adjust according to time, place, and circumstance, according to our ability, our level of commitment, our level of advancement,
hmm,
and basically the circumstances. So supposing, say, the principle is uh, always remember Krishna and never forget Krishna. The circumstances may be driving you crazy and causing you a lot of negative feelings which you feel unfortunate about internally, even if not externally. But if through all that process you can somehow finally come back to the principle, which is always remember Krishna, never forget Krishna, that itself is quite an achievement.
hmm.
We tend to think that absolutely copy paste from the book, the way Arjuna asked questions to Krishna, Krishna.
24 hours,
Yeah,
like all.
Arjuna, yeah, yeah, it doesn't work like that. This is Kali Yuga, this is a material world, and we are conditioned souls. So, and also, always remember Krishna, never forget Krishna doesn't just mean like in a blind parrot style you're remembering. It might mean that, but it means basically subduing your mind and trying to accept that whatever is happening, Krishna has a purpose or a reason, and it's in your best interest to purify you. Or you're getting this particular negative experience, you might be able to see through the fog after some time, you meaning all of us, and see this is directly linked to something else which I did which was unfair, and I'm just getting the reaction for it. Or I really need to go through this because I have this real weakness for this very stupid desire or longing which is harmful for me and which will eventually drive me off this path. Or there is some other grievance that I'm not able to let go of at all. Now he has put me in such a situation where this is far worse, so I'd much rather give up that other grievance. I'd just rather let go. So if this thinking process carries on, which is meaning that we use our mind basically when we say how do you use your mind in the service of Krishna, it means basically to really to surrender, to subdue it and try to see through the fog and see some light. So this is just one example. It is not this cut, copy, paste what we see. Two people are standing on a chariot. One is the personality of Godhead, one is his cousin, one of the Pandavas. And questions and answers take place, and by the end of it, Arjuna is surrendered. It's not really like that. Or if you can give me a particular situation where you feel ordinary, maybe run of the mill, mundane, which your questioner had in mind, that how are we expected to keep up, uphold the principles, and at the same time carry on with material life.
I think the best example maybe would be like, I think you already, I think maybe mentioned it, like constantly remembering Krishna and realizing that, you know, that Krishna is in, let's say, every single living entity and is present everywhere. That's very tough to do, but then it's like because when we are engaged in the material world, we're constantly made to doubt other people in one sense. Like it's
Absolutely.
it's like
Absolutely.
uh, you feel like, you can't trust this person, or you can't. So I don't know. Like, so I guess maybe that's like, how do you balance that? Maybe. Yeah.
No, I think there again, don't forget that the Krishna had no illusions about the kind of people the Kauravas were. He used to trick them. You remember when he gave them the
Yeah.
choice, both, I think it was Yudhishthir and Duryodhan were standing, one was standing at his feet when he was asleep, and one was standing at his head. I think Duryodhan, uh, and then he was, as soon as he opened his eyes, Duryodhan positioned himself in such a way, I think, I'm not sure who was where, but that he would get the priority in asking a favor. And what he asked was, I think he wanted Krishna's weapons. Whereas the Pandavas said, no, we don't want the weapons, we just want
He,
you with us.
yeah, he was standing on the. I think he was standing like, Krishna was lying down, I think, and he was
That's
standing next to his head. Arjuna was on his feet, and so when Krishna woke up, he saw Arjuna first because Arjuna was at his feet. But Duryodhana, I think, said that I came before. I came here before.
right.
I came here before,
So
or
I
something like
get
that.
to ask the
I
favor
get to ask
first.
favor.
I
Yeah.
get the choice, yeah. So it's not as if Krishna didn't know who he was dealing with, or Krishna himself is showing that in the material world one has to have discrimination. You know what? Yeah, you can see a tiger and see that the super soul is there even inside the tiger, but there are still laws and rules of nature that work, which you have to respect. We can't kind of go in like there was some guy in the Calcutta. He went into the Calcutta Zoo and tried to garland the tiger, and naturally he was mauled, and I think it was fatal. Because so there are laws of nature. Krishna is consistently telling us both here and in the Bhagavatam, the laws of nature will keep working. Just you being feeling very good, and seeing the Lord, or seeing the super soul in the other living creature, even in a very evil human being. So there are evil human beings. You can't just so simplistically and such a shallow way, as many motivational thinkers will now unfortunately mislead the public and tell you, just feel good, just do good, and everything will be fine, and smile. And but the material world is a very complicated place. I don't think things get sorted out by just doing these kind of things. So it is not so difficult to think of Krishna, and at the same time be aware of the dangers and of the evil in the people we are dealing with. The confusion comes from so many shallow, so called spiritual leaders and motivational thinkers and speakers who are trying to argue just the opposite, that if you just see the good in someone, the good will come out. Whereas Bhagavad Gita is telling you, it's considered the ABCD of philosophy, and it's telling you there are the three modes. There are people in the different modes. They act in a certain way according to the mode that's most influencing them. So you have to watch out. If you're dealing with somebody completely in the mode of ignorance, say he's a druggie, say he's insane, he's drunk, you have to expect the worst if you're alone with such an individual. Or if he's a history sheeter, he's out of jail, he's had so many murders he's been accused of. It's stupid. Because we are not at that level of saintliness, that if we just see the good in the person, automatically the good comes.
Yeah.
So the Bhagavad Gita is telling you, actually, Krishna is getting Arjuna to wake up, that these relatives whom he feels very bad to kill, that's true, but that they have given him kind of a rough deal, and now all options are over. There's no other option but to go for war, which involves the probability of killing the people on the other side. Krishna is telling him to do it, you know. So I think it's not so difficult for us if we judge our own common sense and just our ability to observe. If we sharpen it more and more, I think a whole lot of there's a
Also,
lot.
I think
Yeah,
there's to add to the point actually, like I think a lot of people also, I think, grew up with like maybe some negative experience of maybe certain spiritual leaders or certain people they came in contact with, like
sure.
they, so because of that, if I don't wanna name names, but in my own family, like there's an individual, but you grow up with maybe some negative experience, like somebody said something to you, and then like you kind of you're like, no, I don't know, I can't,
No,
I don't want to do it or something. I don't know. Maybe that also plays a role.
yeah, I think so many once popular spiritual leaders are kind of being exposed for wrongdoing, either sexual impropriety. Now it's the Dalai Lama and this young boy, and he's whatever was the reason why he was seen doing that. So it's very natural that the common man will be very suspicious and not willing to accept any of this. It's in his own interest not to just become a blind follower, his or her own interest. So this is Kali Yuga. It's the Iron Age. Nothing is easy, and there's so much injustice and unfairness and cruelty, and things don't always, hardly ever do they work out in the way we expect. So it's a very difficult age. But even if we don't trust the channels through which these messages are being passed down to us, surely we can like trust the instructions themselves directly by reading these books, reading the Bhagavatam. I have seen one area where devotees ISKCON members get stumped, because you know how in the four regulative principles, one of them is that
Meat
you
eating,
shouldn't
illicit
gamble.
sex,
Gamble.
gambling. Yeah.
Okay. Now, investing in the share market,
Uh,
investing in mutual funds, it's like so common, and it seems to be the only way to beat inflation. Because if you just put it in a conservative fixed deposit or a term deposit, not only that the rate of interest is low, the after taxation, then it is not able to be at par at all with the rate of inflation. The only way to beat the rate of inflation is to buy up shares and equity funds, hybrid funds, which is basically the mutual fund. So I see devotees having a lot of problems there, and kind of, but I don't think there's any other way out. If you want, of course, one could say Krishna will take care of everything, but it doesn't always work like that. I mean, in the material world, it doesn't, suddenly there's a big crash and people lose money, or it's hard. It's very hard even to apply some of these principles. But I think the point is also to the extent to which we are sincere and we are trying, Krishna shows some way. That's
okay.
how we bridge the gulf between the
Right.
actual the principles and operating in the material world. And also, like you said correctly, that it's come to a point where we can't trust anybody. We need to be
Yeah.
suspicious of everyone. Whereas here we are told that we have to see the Lord inside everyone's heart. That's true, but that person's consciousness may be so covered even now that although the Lord is sitting inside the heart, he is not receiving any guidance from the Lord. So then he becomes a very unsafe candidate to have as a friend, we need to be alert and cautious when we deal with such a person. Sure, the Lord is sitting in the heart of that person also, super soul. But if his consciousness is so covered or he's in such low consciousness, then there is a question that he is himself receiving or willing to accept any guidance from the Supreme Lord inside us. So then how, then we need to be kind of double alert or double cautious. Of course, if you see even a crack that they are willing to receive some good sense that's coming basically from Krishna, we should try and give it. That door we should always keep open. It's never a situation where you just slam the door on an opposite party and he's like doomed or damned forever. That's a Christian approach. They go to hell and that's it. But it's
Uh,
not like that with Krishna and in all the pastimes you see. It's not like that at all.
there's actually a similar question, but it'll come later. So, but we can go to the next. Actually, that was a good uh, explanation. Actually,
Yeah.
we'll go to the next. The next question is like, so like this thing happens a lot. Where people say like, I can't give up my bad habits, but I
Aha.
also love to practice my Krishna Bhakti. So, is there a contradiction, or does one have to choose in that?
Actually, the whole way to give up the bad habit is given in the Bhagavad Gita early chapters itself. That it's just that you can't suppress the senses that are already addicted to something. The way to trick them out of the bad habit, because habits means the senses are involved, whether it is the eyes or the tongue or the ears or whatever. So the idea is to develop some higher taste by which you lose interest in this lower activity. That's the only way to, of course, there are times initially when you're struggling where it's best to take yourself out of an environment where the temptation is very strong. I know that we used to have a young devotee girl. She used to live in the Kaidamuk old passport office road. And the whole problem was right at the entrance to the road before you go to her house in a by lane. Someone told me there is this, what is it called? Like tandoor, where chicken and fish and all are like skewered and fried, and she developed real taste for it. So just going through there and getting the smell and all the spices, and it tastes very nice. It smells nice to for someone used to it. So that was a major handicap for her. But then she went to study a medical course. Yeah, that's right. So when she got out of that living in her, where she was living, I think she was actually more successful being able to come to a vegetarian platform because she was out of an environment where her bad habit of, let's say, meat eating, chicken eating
Hmm.
was being facilitated by the presence of this very familiar places where she would go hang out, eat, her parents would buy for her. So habits, just by suppressing the senses, we don't get very far. Okay, I agree. There are people with great self-discipline and strength of character, and they may just say, "I stop doing this from today," and they may be able to uh, stick to it. That's one way. But again, I think you have to be realistic and assess your nature, the circumstances, the pressures on you that often make us slide back into doing things that are harmful for us. The sheer pressure of our circumstances, situations. So many people get back to drinking like this. The pressure becomes too much, went back to smoking because the work pressure became so much. So they say there again, otherwise they had kind of given up this chain smoking, for example. But you have to also be realistic, and one way is it's not easy, but one way is to develop a higher taste, so that through the higher taste gives so much happiness that we are able to lose interest. Actually, what Srila Prabhupada used to do when the early Western disciples came, they were so used to meat and meat dishes. So he would have lots of paneer made and paneer marinated and covered with spices and made like kebab or not just like kebab or tandoor. So gradually they got so attracted, and of course it was prasadam, it was offered, and then that they were able to overcome their habit from childhood of being heavily dependent on meat dishes. Just some examples that I'm giving. But the trick is to develop higher taste and to rein in our senses. That is, stay away from the environment which is going to give you more opportunities to indulge those bad habits. Try and stay away. Be realistic about your nature of how far you can go in tightening the reins. Because the analogy is given of a horse which is running, and if you want to stop it from running towards, let's say, the bad habit, say your senses are like the horse. If you pull in the reins too fast, then it will kind of stand up on its two legs and throw you off. But if you gently tighten the reins and prevent it from going in whichever direction it's going, allow it to stray a little here and drink some water near a puddle and eat some grass, and then pull in the reins and try and bring it on track. If you're able to do that, then I think uh, it's more effective. It's more likely to be more effective. This is this is the
Yeah,
answer.
yeah, that's good. Like, so basically try to see how much you can like reduce, but maybe slowly take it
Slowly, gradually.
gradually and stuff.
It's a very common phenomenon, especially in ISKCON, of this new devotee syndrome. They come and overnight they kind of throw all their clothes out and they decide they become very detached and they don't want any material attachments. And it is stupid because it doesn't work like that. It is a kind of swinging to the other extreme. It's and then after some time, either they themselves realize and they come back. It's always better to know how much is realistically possible and under guidance take these steps.
So the next question is, so like you have the Gita, you have the Mahabharata, and you have the Ramayana, and these other texts. So
Yeah.
they're just these other texts are just full of stories. So how is it like relevant in today's time? So like somebody's asking a question like, if you have all these, you have the Gita, you have the Mahabharata and Ramayana, and they have this particular context, and in when it was said, or what time it happened or whatever, and they're all like nice stories, but like how is it relevant in today's time? I guess maybe when you have we're in the modern world where we have all this technology and there's people flying from one place to another, all these things are happening, so in today's time they're just like, so somebody might say these are just stories. So what would you say to that?
See, I think the interrelationships between the characters in these two epics are the ones you can learn the most from.
Relationships
And
and
interrelationships, how the Supreme Lord, whether he's Rama or Krishna, deals with the others and how the others themselves deal with each other. It's, I think there are real life lessons there for us. See Vali and Sugriva and how Hanuman interferes and how it's all sorted out finally. How basic lesson I think is that you need other people even to follow a spiritual path. You can't do it all on your own. There are going to be crises and unforeseen problems and setbacks, and you need to take the matter to other people and get them to intervene. And we need to be able to help others. I think that's the real lesson, because in these big dramas, okay, you can call them a big dramatic story, but it's so many people or personalities are involved. You sit and think of making a list of the names that come up in these two,
mm,
so many types of characters and each one is being dealt with in a different way. There is, and then their basic passions, and passions I don't mean in the normal sense of the term, but their grievances, and I think there's a huge insight offered into the psychology of human beings that we can't take. There is so much to learn. That's why I think it's in the olden system before the television made an appearance. It was quite common for Bhagavad Sapta and Ram Katha, and a whole month in villages, and everyone would go in the evening and actually participate and enact, because you can,
dramas,
yeah,
action.
dramas, you can learn so much. It is not, they're not just seeing it as some theater for entertainment. So much, say the character of Kaiki, Mantara, these are real things. Go into households and see how a perfectly normal daughter-in-law, mother-in-law, whatever, and then someone comes along, and or husband wife, and then someone son mother, someone comes along and just poisons for no real reason, and then a whole new kind of chapter unfolds. These are all real. So I think one needs to, the best thing about these epics is that they tell us to be prepared, that life in this material world is not easy. Its complications come even in the families of the divine personalities around whom these two epics are revolving. So it's look at the Pandavas and look all the kind of things that the Kauravas did to them for no fault of their own. Look at Duryodhan and the Duryodhan feeling humiliated because he walked into a wall of glass and whatnot, and then he keeps it in his mind and takes it back, and see how they lust after Draupadi, and see what happens when Yudhishthir is a kind of paragon of virtues but not able to actually act on the ground, in a way that Bhima is able to do. And look at even the plight of Draupadi, who, despite having five valiant husbands, and who had
Not getting
Krishna,
support from,
not getting
not,
support, and finally throwing up her hands and depending on the Lord. I think there is so much that is relevant for
yeah.
us. Our dramas may get played out in software company offices or in modern flats, or abroad or wherever, but the dramas and the basic themes just remain the same. Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, I definitely believe in that because I kind of I look at it from I look at things from that point of view. So I'm like, okay, but yeah, I can understand like for for many people like this thing of I think even when I was also small, I also like looked at it as a very good story. But even then, like I remember I watched this thing of Hanuman when I was like watching Ramayana. There's an animated series of Ramayana basically. And for some reason, I always felt when I was a kid, I always felt that Hanuman is the real hero
I
in
see.
the Ramayana
Very
because
interesting.
I don't know why I just felt like for some reason his I could just feel his this thing basically more and because I felt Ram was too perfect. I just
You
felt like
could relate more to Hanuman
yeah
probably.
Hanuman yeah he was he was Vanra he was cursed he had vulnerabilities he had like things were not good and whereas Ram was like the perfect prince and he kind of
Yeah.
he was he
They're
was
too
almost
far
yeah
above us. Yeah.
yeah he was like almost destined to come and be born in this kingdom and kill the demon and become famous and all these things so I don't know Hanuman was just like he was like I felt like he was like a breath of like fresh air in that whole story he
Right.
offered the something different not to obviously put down Ram or
Exactly.
anything
Yeah. Yeah.
but
Yeah.
like but I understand the significance of why he's an incarnation and but in terms of how the story went as a kid itself I was like Hanuman was just more interesting like he was just a bit we kind of captivated the whole like even when he wants to know who's coming in the forest like who are these two people he like changes his form and becomes a beggar and then he's like he asks these questions and
Where does he do that? Where does
like
Hanuman?
when they're in that somewhere in the forest when Sita gets kidnapped and then uh,
I see.
Ram and Lakshman set out to find her. So
Right.
on the way, they're approaching this thing. What is that? Sugriv's sort of
Right. Right.
area, right?
Area.
So some people tell Sugriv that that these two human beings are coming. They don't say like
See.
they don't say like but they're dressed in like these saffron clothes and all that. So they
Right.
must be saintly people. So then so he tells Hanuman, you go and find out who are these people and so then Hanuman goes and like he disguises himself as a human being.
Uh-huh.
He changes basically
Facial
changes
features.
he changes his form and then he becomes a human being and he's like covers himself with a hood and everything and all that stuff and he's like, what are you? Who are you people? And he's pretending to be very old and
I
but
see.
then it's also said that Ram could figure out like that this is Hanuman, this is a great devotee and even Hanuman could also figure out like very instantly like that this person is the incarnation of God. He's here and so there was a instant chemistry. But
Okay.
the thing is that he had to play that part of like asking who are you and this
Right.
that and all that just to for the story to go. But
Okay.
I guess that was interesting like like Lakshman didn't figure it out. Krishna knew. So Krishna, Ram knew
I
and
think one reason why uh, the common audience is skeptical and is asking why, what is there in this Ramayana
hmm,
Mahabharata for us, and how does it, because there is a real and huge disconnect between in the course of their upbringing. There's a huge disconnect. Part of the disconnect is because our whole idea is gathered strength that Hindu, and I think Hinduism and religion and everything means just something very pacifist and very peaceful, and you never react even if some very great wrong is done to you. You just smile and bless, and but that's not the real. It's a huge disconnect. It's no, that was not how Hindus and Hinduism and spirituality, not just Hinduism, the epics, they are actually like they're teaching us how to act in different situations. Take help from superiors, take help from the Lord Himself. See the signs when He sends messengers and messages. Negotiate, be prepared for the worst, but do your best. This is really, I mean, the do your duty but remain detached to avoid disappointment and to avoid the anger and frustration that comes from disappointment if you are attached to the fruits of your results. There's so much that's actually applicable on a day-to-day basis, never mind what job you're doing or where you are. It's just like a huge amount. That's
So we can move to the next question then.
yeah.
So this is, I think, a very common sort of question. Maybe it's like, if Krishna is the supreme personality of Godhead, then why does he allow bad things to happen at all? Why
uh,
can't he? Why can't he create a world full of peace?
because he is interested. One is this whole idea of a nice, happy, peaceful world where we live here forever. That's not, firstly, the material world is not been created with that intent or intention. It's been created to make things so tough for us, for most of us, that in one lifetime or the other, we decide enough is enough and we just want to go back where there is real peace or where there is real fulfillment, which is to be our original position of being close to the Lord and serving the Lord. Now, if there is only peace and there is no disruption of those peaceful dealings, there is no opportunity for a new steps to be taken that draw us closer to the Lord and the Lord closer to us. Let's say in a household where everything is working like clockwork, nothing ever goes wrong. People just do their own stuff. Each member has their own room. The food is ready. The servants come. The salaries are paid. Yeah, there's no real closeness between everyone. But say there's a crisis, one child falls ill, father says that the money is not enough this month, can you please? People come to each other's help. Servant's not there, the mother says, can you also help out please? I can't cope. So that kind of circumstances, people come together and form relationships and get closer. So that's the whole purpose of throwing us into this world where, which is temporary and nothing is certain. Things go like this today and tomorrow they may go in a different way. So that this constantly changing, that's the nature of this world, so that we finally get it. This is like a prison house. Depending on our karma, we get either a VIP prison situation or we get a not so VIP. So we may think we are very comfortable and we born into a house with ACs in every room, etc. But it's still basically a prison house, and you don't know when the rug will be pulled from beneath your feet and you get thrown out into all the misery of this material world. So it is in order for us to get the message that we don't belong here. We are not from here and we don't belong here, and we need to equip ourselves or qualify ourselves to get out of here once and for all. If not in this lifetime, gradually through
Yeah.
from the cycle of birth and death. We can be really fully well positioned and peaceful and completely contented and satisfied only when we are back in the spiritual world in the close association of the Lord, because that is the crying need of the soul.
Hmm.
As long as we are only thinking in terms of the mind and the body, we are looking for peaceful situations. Naturally, who wouldn't like peace? But it's not going to be available here, at least not for long, because the soul is not going to be satisfied with just some peace. The soul is hankering for food, which is service, and the ultimate service is to that of whom we are part and parcel. And that process we can start here, but it gets its full quota only when we are back in the spiritual world in direct association with the Supreme Lord and the whole ding bang.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's a good it's a good answer to that question. It is like
But remember, just remember this question and the earlier question, it might be coming from a inherently impersonalist type of mentality. We have
hmm,
to also accept that a questioner say is coming across lifetimes, and in this lifetime is like this.
hmm,
Wants to keep everything at a distance, doesn't want to risk disappointment and disillusionment again, has had seen so much of it in previous lifetimes and in this lifetime. They don't see anything they can learn from the epics, and they don't see why we can't just be peaceful with a good God. That is this impersonalist kind of, yeah, go on.
okay. So the next question is Krishna consciousness against other paths? Because it seems like in the
Right.
books that Prabhupada wrote, he stresses on why bhakti is superior, and
Yeah,
while in other paths they have their own version of why theirs is superior.
sure.
Doesn't it seem like division, and shouldn't our path be about compassion and love to others?
Okay, the thing is, he asked Krishna himself in the Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna explores all those parts of Gyan and Karma and Dhyana Marg. You're welcome to try those other parts, but why Prabhupada is stressing bhakti is because, particularly in the Kali Yuga in our times, nothing else is really suitable, or it's a slow path. And the point he's making is, when the elevator is available to go to the top, who will take the staircase?
Hmm,
I prefer the staircase. I take the dhyana mark. I will take the karma or the jnana mark. They are welcome to it. But then the Bhagavad Gita is also showing us how there are many pitfalls in each of these. And Kali
hmm,
Yuga is a question of this dhyan or Ashtanga Yoga path. Okay, karma you can try, but the karma yoga is basically very much the platform of fruitive mentality. You do all your duties and the Lord takes care of you. It's like a business deal. And when something goes wrong, you don't have any surplus funds in your spiritual bank account to encash. Whereas in bhakti, it is straightaway taking things above just the business deal platform. You're already kind of making yourself vulnerable and setting up a relationship where things can go wrong. But you've already thrown out a rope, or he has thrown out a rope and you
hmm.
clutched it. So
It's
it's
like a
actually,
it's like a relationship you have with anybody. There's like good and bad moments. Like, but
yeah,
the
but
overall you value the relationship because
that's
you
right.
can, yeah.
You value the relationship. Things do go wrong, bad and good things happen, but the relationship keeps developing. This is why he keeps stressing bhakti. The other thing which someone also brought it to my notice is certain comments of Prabhupada where he damns maybe other much respected leaders were actually conversations that were held privately with all the intimacy, and when you're a family gathering, everyone comes together. Now, for example, say a hardcore BJP Hindutva type of guy. For example, I know one of my uncles, this is on my mother's side, Shroff House. Now let's say his grandson is talking to him and says, Dad, Grandpa, what do you think? Don't you think Rahul Gandhi will make a really good prime minister? Now, from the BJP Hindutva point of view, there is Rahul Gandhi is today in the position of a pest and a nuisance. So he comes down heavily and says, What rubbish are you talking? Don't talk. He's an idiot. Don't say such things. Now, if it gets recorded and published, and 10 years later, say circumstances, Rahul Gandhi is the prime minister,
Hmm.
and this kind of thing goes public, people will say, My God, that particular BJP person, he called our prime minister a fool and an idiot when he was talking to his. So this is actually what's happened with a lot of Prabhupada's private conversations. The disciples recorded everything, then published everything in the idea that this is a way to preserve it.
Hmm.
But when it's taken out of the context and the kind of father-son dealings, shut up, you idiot. We are talking about such and such. I'm not mentioning names.
Hmm.
Damn fool, idiot. So today, when these things now, and especially with WhatsApp, it's very difficult to explain to people.
Yeah.
Someone recently, I think it was about Mahatma Gandhi that Prabhupada said. Prabhupada himself was a Gandhian. Then he got disillusioned and left. But when he attacks Gandhi, in answer to a disciple, It is not so much Gandhi is attacking. He is attacking the disciples' stupidity in thinking that Gandhi's idea of non-violence is feasible. Because Gandhi himself by then had got completely disappointed that his non-violent struggle ended in all these riots. He was heartbroken. So Prabhupada is trying to drive home, hammer home the point in the limited time he had on this planet. With these raw, uneducated people, they start uneducated spiritually. They come to India and the first thing they hear of is the Mahatma and the Mahatma Gandhi. So they start saying, oh, what's wrong with him? We could be his followers. So he's saying, just look at him. His whole idea of non-violence is antithetical to what the Bhagavad Gita is saying. In this material world, it's not happening. We don't have to embrace violence. You know, but look at this material world, there is violence is going to be done to you by our own karma. You know, beloved ones are snatched away by destiny. You know, it is violence to our emotions, even if nobody actually physically attacks us. It's the material world is going to be like that. So Prabhupada was so keen to get people quickly to come to the platform where they see the reality for what it is. That whoever else was preaching and teaching something that was little delusional relatively, he would just smash it straight away. And bhakti is the quickest, the path to the elevator to the top. That's the idea.
Also, like he has to, in one sense, like I remember when I was reading the Prabhupada Leelamrita, there were many instances where, you could see like when he first met like when he came to America, then his relationship with all the people there was like a little bit more, maybe there was not much of like little friendly because he's trying
Formality,
to formality, he's trying to get used to the place, first of all, trying to get used to the place, then understand how he can set up, I mean, how he can start his work. And then as time goes on, when you see like how closer he gets with everybody,
right,
he's like his relationship is just like maybe anybody else, like we have a relationship with as a friend or has whatever.
right, right.
Who, like when you're dealing with people, like we have to. So I don't know. It's
It
yeah, like it.
changes. It certainly changed. It certainly changed as things became more formal and rules were put in place. Yeah, go on.
And also like also the thing is like when you read, like when you read a script, like when you read scriptures, for example, there's like I like right now I just finished the teachings of Lord Chaitanya.
I see.
So I am now reading this the teaching, I think it's teachings of Lord Kapila, no, sorry, Nectar of Instruction. I'm reading that.
I see.
So
That
so
small one. Yeah, there's a
yeah,
few
yeah.
few verses.
Yeah, so like they have long purports, like like
Purports.
very long purports. So I'm reading that, but one thing like I always noticed in like all the scriptures like so far is that there's like a there's like a constant this thing of like Prabhupada saying that like making the emphasis the point about impersonalism, personalism, or at least the theme is like it makes you very clear. By the time you read all these books, you get to a point where you realize, okay, the theme is clear by now. It's like he's like establishing this idea of like why he's had to explain multiple times why bhakti or the devotional path is higher in taste and in quality or better, and why impersonalism is like, or this non-dualistic or whatever it is,
Yeah.
the Mayavadi school of thought, why that is like less. And like just yesterday itself I was reading this one paragraph where he mentioned something like, somewhere the paragraph would mention the sometimes the according to, so I think I'm paraphrasing, but I think he said like according to the bhaktis, um, or the bhakti school of thought or something like he said, and where he says liberation is worse than
Death.
uh,
Worse than death.
death or hell or something like that. Like
Yes.
it's worse than that, worse than death, or so it's like yeah, so he mentions that, and so it's like a yeah, so it can, but if you I guess maybe if you don't read enough of I think when you start reading, at least if you read one book, then it may come across as he's like trying to attack some other
Actually, again,
this, but
yeah,
like
again, because also, if you see the context in which Prabhupada started preaching in India, particularly, idea of salvation is moksha or liberation, which means you just merge with what? Okay, with the Brahma Jyoti. That's a possibility if you desire it. But Prabhupada is making the point, and this is really based on scripture, not just his personal opinion, that you go, the jiva goes, qualifies itself by penance and austerity and whatever, and after death merges with the effulgence. It's very lonely and boring out there. And the jiva, it is not a permanent position, so the jiva falls right back into the material world and has to start all over again. So if we think, if one lifetime itself, when we look around us, even if tragedy has or has not beset us personally, you see the suffering that people are undergoing. If we really open our eyes wide and ears and see, if one is given a choice, one wouldn't want to come back here, given the fact that things are only going to get worse and worse. You know, whether it's things are not going to improve. The material world is not set up like that. Pockets we can create some better circumstances, environmentally better friendly. Sure, huge crusades are taking place. Save the soil, respect the earth, respect water, purify the water, and so on. But things are only going to get worse. So if the idea is that we are not mentally bright enough or adult enough to make the choice that we don't want to come back here, Prabhupada is making that choice for us and shutting all other doors and saying, only go for bhakti. Because in bhakti, there's a lot of mercy or causeless mercy involved, particularly in Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's movement. And if we don't get things right, once we've caught the attention of the Supreme Lord, whether he's Krishna or Lord Chaitanya, if what we don't get right, he will still cover a lot of that ground for us. Because so that is not available in the rigid Ramarajya Ram Bhakti. It is not available in the Shaiva or in Shakta. It's all strictly according to rule based and austerities and fasting, and even in the traditional system of Vaishnava Vishnu worship. You know, you have to get everything right. You can't do anything sinful. You have to, otherwise you get terrible reaction. So it's, I think, because the listener or the reader or his follower was not adult enough to make that choice. Prabhupada is making that choice for us. It's that only bhakti, only in not liberation, not moksha, not the impersonal path. And I think in some places is bhakti is the only thing that has the ability to get us unstuck. It's like some glue has got us stuck into this cycle of birth and death again and again. What is called, what is it called? Samsara. Yeah, that's right. This samsara. So only bhakti is so powerful that it can kind of get us unstuck and remove that glue. So in our best interest, he is trying to hammer home this point that don't waste one more lifetime trying to search for some impersonal truth and then facing disappointment, etc. Yeah.
So yeah, that's a good listing. The next question is, the material world is full of suffering, but it also gives us the ability to engage with many people.
Sure.
The technology lets us travel to faraway places to spread the message. We are able to take care of uh, we are able to take care of ourselves by having like a house and so on.
Sure.
It it with technology we can cure diseases. So is it all that bad? So
Technology is not bad at all because if it is used properly, it's like speeding up everything. But the
mm,
same technology, invariably, in the hands of a few wicked people, can turn completely against us. It's, I think it's already happening with artificial intelligence. Lot of debate how artificial intelligence now is going to make it very difficult for us to know what is fake and what is real, even in the WhatsApp messages we get. Because you know, now they showed Barack Obama doing something and they
mm,
showed Modi pressing a button to start a war, and there's going to be such chaos as a result of it. So, and the artificial intelligence is going to be used to do surveillance on us totally. Nothing is going to be private or secret. In fact, I think it knows what our tastes are, what And after a while, it is in the hands of a few very powerful people who are doing data collection or data piracy or whatever. With that data, they are going to make morons of us. We won't have need to select anything because it's already, it AI, it kind of, it filters and it patterns, it can just do super fast. So it will tell us what is best for us. And like this, our lives are going to become hellish and empty. In that situation, technology becomes a very big enemy. It becomes an enemy, not to mention a more crude version, that, nuclear war, where it comes from basically advancement of science. One crazy man decides to press the button, and then it's going to see what's happening. Okay, Putin has his, there are people who support what Putin does, but the havoc that's done to common people and how many decades they're going to take to recover. So technology, it can't be stopped, the advancement of technology. The best we can do is to use the technology to try to enhance the service of the Lord and to enhance our connection with the Lord. But we are not dependent on technology at all to basically make that connection with the Lord. We should be very clear about that.
Mm.
It's not as if it's only after technology and all this that we are basically able to connect. They have always been Rama Bhaktas and Krishna Bhaktas and Shiva Bhaktas from centuries ago. They didn't have any of the facilities we have. In terms of our fundamental duty in life, or the purpose of the human birth, which is to revive that connection and to start the process, the journey back home, we don't really depend on technology. Yeah, if since technology is coming in, we can enhance and use it, provided it is used judiciously, means cautiously. Not that we become addicted to it or we become completely dependent, and it's also destroying lives. Look at
Mm.
this any young child of 10, 7, even before if you put internet on their phone, anything they open, there's pornography popping out. So where is the innocence for that 6, 7-year-old child? And
Mm.
it's also messing up people who, are exposed to it, and then they start kind of abusing young children. Why? Because their consciousness is constantly in that kind of weak state. So
Mm.
technology is both harmful. It's like a double-edged sword, no? Like it's good and it's
Yeah.
bad.
I think the next question kind of, I think maybe already discussed. It's like it's mentioned in the Chaitanya Charitamrita that as a spiritualist, striving for liberation is worse than hell. But if liberation gives you peace of mind, why is it worse than hell according to Krishna Bhakti?
No,
So I
what
think,
is their idea of liberation? What do they feel will happen when there is liberation? It depends on that, no? I don't think the person who's asking has already had liberation and come back here. If he experienced liberation and came back, then itself should make him or her ask, what is the purpose of that liberation if basically I had to come back here to this unsure, tragic world? That's the whole point, that the so-called liberation or moksha, yeah, okay, you can have it. It's because people are conditioned that that is the only goal.
mm,
Till Prabhupada and the Bhakti school and Gaudiya Vaishnavism came up, liberation was the only option. And by liberation, what do they mean? That you don't take birth again and you go and kind of merge.
mm,
But if, yeah, I think this is, the question is coming from a person who likes solitude, or completely prefers to be by himself or herself, doesn't want to deal with other people. One is that liberation is not a permanent position. It's by moksha or liberation. You go and merge in the Brahma Jyoti. You fall down again because it gets lonely and boring, and you finish your quota of pious credit and you come down back to the material world.
mm.
The other thing is, I can understand that the liberation is appealing to a certain type of person for whom who likes solitude, who doesn't want to have to deal with other
It
people.
was, yeah, it was Arjuna's, like before the Gita was spoken to Arjuna, he would have probably preferred liberation at the end of his life, unless Krishna had spoken to him in that way. Like he was already
That's
like he was already making that decision of like I want to give up everything and sacrifice everything and go in this direction. So, when Krishna told him everything, and then, his mind changed, obviously. But I
Right.
think everybody's default views that maybe it's like they're kind of, I think,
Conditioned to think that
yeah,
we don't know
because,
anything else.
yeah, because you have this idea of like spirituality where the person sitting in a secluded place and like in the mountain with no contact with anybody, and like you're wearing very less clothes and you have like all this marks on your
Baggage, yeah,
body,
yeah.
and then
No, no
you're
needs,
meditating.
no
Yeah,
physical needs, no particular demands to go and find your
yeah.
food, drink.
So that I think that maybe has become very romanticized, I think, like
Romanticize.
in
Yeah, yeah,
the
that's the word. But I
so
think
it
you tell someone to go and try that for a couple of years. I think after a while they'll get bored and lonely and
yeah,
come back here. You know,
it's interesting because there are actually there are some people in the Himalayas or in the Hindu Kush mountains and in
quality life.
or who are in this, like, who've dedicated their lives to kind of like be in that way, like detach themselves from everything, and a lot of them are Shiva bhakts, like, so they are kind of um so I think, Supriya, is your speaker volume okay?
Yeah, because it turned in the opposite direction. Sorry. Uh-huh.
Oh, okay, okay, okay.
Yeah, yeah,
It's because I was hearing some noise. That's why I was like,
yeah.
yeah,
Go on.
but I was just saying that like there are a lot of people who are in these mountains and they practice these austerities and all that. Like I was just listening once to some discussion. I think it was with I forgot who, but it was a discussion with I'm not sure which spiritual leader, but they were saying that that they I think it I'm not sure who it was, but they were saying that they met their sage. I think maybe it was Sri M. See, have you heard of Sri M?
Yeah, yeah, I have.
Yeah,
It's most likely him because he likes to tell these stories of his Himalayan trips
yeah.
and has gone.
So he says that he met his spiritual master, I think Maharishi Mahesh Yogi, I think like
Right, right, right.
Babaji, I think that was his
Yeah,
master name. So
yeah.
he met him in the Himalayas, like he was going, and he says that I was about to commit suicide
Uh-huh.
and jump off the bridge or whatever, and then like I think he said no, but he's like instant reaction was like I didn't want to jump off, so I went away, and then he met Babaji. He saw Babaji suddenly, like in the forest. He could see a light and he went there and he saw Babaji, and the Babaji met him, and then he said, "Oh, it's finally at last we meet." That's the first thing he said when he saw him. And apparently, like he said, like he's saying that when he was growing up, he grew up as a Muslim. So he
Yes, I
grew up,
know, I know.
and he's from, I think he's
Kozhikode or
Malayali.
Kannur or
Uh,
Kozhikode or something.
yeah.
Yeah.
So he's like somewhere he's on a child somewhere he saw this man in front of him and he couldn't make out who it was.
I
So
see.
then so I guess he made the connection like after a point like this person is none other than Babaji only. This person is the
Right,
same
right.
Babaji person. So he's on the path of Kriya Yoga and
Yes.
trying
Uh-huh.
to like he's on that path of Kriya Yoga and trying to master it and sends out messages and all that stuff. And yeah, so he's mentioned all these people like he did this thing. I don't know what you would think of it, but he's done this thing where on there's a podcast where he went and he created a rudraksh or something. That's what he's
You mean
like.
like a miracle,
Yeah,
like Sai
a
Baba? Yeah,
miracle.
yeah.
So he did a miracle where out of the thing he created a rudraksh and he gave it, and he's known to do this. I mean, he's done it before also. But I was like, and he was like, there are these I don't know what you call it, like these beings that are there, and he's able to access anybody. But he says that he doesn't want to talk too much about it because it's like if you talk too much about it, then they get scared and they don't want to, be involved in any way and things like that. So I was fine. I don't know. I didn't know what to make of it, but I was like, It's like there are people who practice the mystical arts, who go to the Himalayas, who want to
Sure.
become sages, and they go for this purpose of trying to become these
Realize
realize.
the truth or realize the
Yeah,
supreme.
like they want to get some mystic power. They want to get some type of, like they want to be able to like travel to different universes, and they want
Yeah,
to
but
get
that is
something.
yeah, but the sixth chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, the if you just go over it again, Kannan, that is regular Ashtanga yoga.
Ashtanga
These
yoga. Okay.
the mystic siddhis do come as a byproduct. I'm not saying that these people have it, but a few of them might achieve it. The mystic siddhis, and this is one of the dangers of that dhyana or Ashtanga yoga process, because then they get more attracted by the byproduct and they forget the final aim, which is to realize the supreme. So it is possible. I'm not saying Shriyam is in that category. I have personally found that Shriyam doesn't have anything substantial to offer. He has all these stories, doesn't have anything substantial to offer, and he's misleading. He's misleading his followers because like his take is he's not against anything. So he will accept anything. So he will accept any type of meat, not even just the regular, but any, because he's just kind of so much above all this. Now this is I think it's harmful, and it's really misleading people because you're only encouraging them to do more sinful activities. And I'll give you another example that once I remember my parents got roped into some gathering. It was like one of my dad's official friends, now retired and settled here. And they were hosting some great follower of Shriyam. Shriyam didn't, he personally come. And this guy apparently was telling a story how in some way Shriyam was involved. They arranged the birthday party, the dog, or something, a feast in honor of the dog. And they all sat down and ate the feast, and the dog sat. I mean, this is that kind of stuff is going on today in this modern postmodernist, where people can't tell the difference between the level of consciousness of the dog and the human being. So okay, you can have a dog, you can love your dog, and so on, and the dog has loyalty and so many assets. It acts as your security and guard, and but to completely blur and merge the distinctions between the human birth, which is got after many passing through many other forms of a species, and to bring it down to the level of a god, or to uplift the dog and claim it is part of the modern postmodernist kind of madness. It's
Hmm.
so in what way is this a spiritual leader if he cannot even teach his people the difference between the level of consciousness of a human being and that of another animal, or the opportunities that are there in the human birth and compared to the opportunities that are there in a dog's birth. So I think I have not found anything substantial coming out. Secondhand, I have talked to people who go for his talks and see his video shows. Yeah, maybe his connection with that Mahesh Yogi was genuine. It was coming from a previous life. That's why he saw some person, But how is one to know? How is one to know? Because it's also very easy to make up these things, and there will always be people. There's a saying, you're looking for a cheater, you will get a cheater. You're looking for a teacher, you will get a teacher. So
Oh, that's a nice
yeah,
thing.
yeah, it's very important. I think Prabhupada used to say this.
Oh.
Depends, because the Lord in the heart guides you accordingly. And sometimes we go through getting in with cheaters because it is a process, and we have come above that, or there's some purification, there's some sincerity which tells us we're not satisfied with that, and then we come to a real teacher. So there are going to be all these kind of sub narratives going on around us, because there are all types of people at different levels of advancement with different varying levels of sincerity, and what are they really searching for? Okay, yeah, go on.
So we have three more questions. So the next question is, in the Bhagavad Gita, it is mentioned that one must be in a state of equilibrium in both happiness and distress. Does that mean a person should become expressionless and cold-hearted to praise or failure?
Good one. Yeah, that's a good question, because we do end up becoming like that by when we try to follow this instruction. It's a good question, because we can end up being over detached and not showing any affection to the family which we ought to be showing. It's very hard to strike a balance. So, no, I think the idea is equilibrium, meaning we should know that it may not last.
Hmm.
Like 1 year goes very well for the family. Son gets into some engineering, daughter gets into some great job, and the family is like at the peak. But then, sometime later, Kala or time, as it says in the Bhagavatam, it very much happened to our family. I mean, 1986 was like a peak year. I don't know what astrological period we were running. Brother was already in a university abroad. Then I won this INLAD scholarship and got abroad. Dad had come back from 3 years in Iraq, and then he was in the railway board, and everything went well. And my mother, I think, was even a little scared. But then subsequently, 10 years later, if you're talking about 86, 96, okay, we came back. 10 years later, so much tragedy and so much upheaval. So I think the idea behind the equilibrium is that in happiness, thank the Lord, but be aware and take shelter of his instruction that in the material world, nothing is permanent. It doesn't necessarily mean that happiness is going to end in tragedy just around the corner. Need not be, but something will come to upset the balance and like to trouble us and to harass us. And then again, happiness and peace may come.
It's like a flow, right? Like
It's a flow, it's a
flow.
flux, it's a constant state of flux. And we have to be prepared for that. So
I
that,
think the
yeah,
expressionless and the cold-hearted to praise and failure. This is something like I kind of like I've kind of had to sort of also maybe deal with a bit once in a while. Like some, I mean, a lot of the times I would say like where I'm practicing like I'm very focused on this thing, and then like I'll notice that like with everything else, I'm like not showing much like emotion.
interest or
Yeah,
response.
yeah, and like. So then I'll be like, I'll tell myself, okay, don't show emotions or show this, and
You
then
know,
I'll
I
show this.
I think it's very important to maintain clear communications because
Mm.
us as aspiring devotees can cause a lot of confusion in the material circles we move in. People can understand why don't we say oh ho ha sad when something happens, someone dies. But it's also hard to explain because it's as if all the time we are talking down and we are preaching to them. So if, like, say, a really old person dies, what is there so to say ooh ha ha? Because young people are dying, so many other things are happening, and it is a natural course of events that an old person, as we know, he gives up the body. It is like a dress. The Bhagavad Gita is telling us. But the common person expects you to show a lot of emotion, and yeah, it's tough. We can end up going to the other extreme, like you said, being cold and emotionless. But we should try not to be like that.
What is the next question is what is the difference between showing love towards the less privileged and love towards Krishna?
Aha. Now, showing love towards the less privileged, if the idea is philanthropy, material charity, philanthropy, giving people what they don't have, that's at one level. Okay. But it is not at all the same with the Supreme Lord because the earlier one, which is giving those who have the less privilege, that is on a material platform. How can you give love for the less privileged? Obviously, you mean materially less privileged. You give them those material things that they don't have. It's completely on a material platform. But if you can spiritualize that interaction by giving them some knowledge of Krishna, or getting them on a track, at least making them aware, then the huge difference that is between Manava Seva and Madhav Seva. This is the reason this confusion is coming because so many again in the past of our prominent spiritual leaders have, including maybe Mahatma Gandhi has said Manav Seva is Madhav Seva. As long as you, and the Bible may also recommend this, show charity to the poor and you're pleasing God. But the seva to Madhav or God is something totally different. It's like on a one-on-one, totally spiritual relationship.
Mm.
Madhav seva is on a material platform. The two are different. The reaction and the results you're going to get from that is also going to be different. This Madhav Seva, okay, it is pious activity, it is recommended by all scriptures. Traditional, even tradition tells us you give dhanam, you give charity, you feed the poor. That's all good. But it cannot be the equivalent of Madhav Seva at all. It cannot bring that kind of satisfaction and joy, because Madhav Seva basically means that the soul is connecting with that of which it is a part and parcel, and that feeling of fulfillment is
Hmm.
just so great. The feeling of fulfillment is so great that one has to experience it, as Bhagavad Gita 9 chapter told us.
Hmm.
Pratyakshavagamam dharmyam
Hmm.
susukam kartum abhyayam. Pratyakshavagamam dharmyam means you have to experience it. It's so simple, it's so easy, it makes you so happy. Now, I don't think anybody, even how much Madhav Seva they have done, Manav Seva they have done, that is, then poor and are going to have this experience that is so purifying and so. There's a huge difference. Madhav Seva is not Manav Seva. Unfortunately, people have been misled and misguided because there are spiritual leaders who have been preaching this. Because
Okay.
what they were preaching in the name of religion was just something very mundane, material religion. They never gave any knowledge of real spirituality, of the soul, of difference between spiritual and material, spiritual world and material. They never gave any such difference because they themselves probably didn't know.
Hmm.
Yeah.
So like even like for example, like a lot of the devotees would say like I think this is that story is with Jada Bharat and Rishabhanu, where Jada Bharat's after Rishabhanu like kind of he kind of sarcastic, he's like being sarcastic towards Jada Bharat and
Rishabh,
saying
yeah, yeah. Is it
that he,
Rishabh Dev? Is it Rishabh Dev or Rishabhan? Okay,
he
anyway, go on. Yeah, the
yeah,
king. The
now
king.
even I'm also, yeah. So that
Yeah.
king basically he asks him like asked Jada Bharata like
Rahu Guna was the king.
Rahugana,
Rahu Guna
that's
was
right,
the king.
that's right.
Right. Yeah.
Rishabh somebody else I think I'm not sure.
Yeah. Those are
So
different people.
yeah, yeah. So like King Rahunaga asked him like like he's like being sarcastic to Jada Bharat because he's not able to carry the palanquin and
Yeah, yeah.
walk. So Jada Bharat's response is like he's for the first time he's speaking after like being quiet for most of his life,
Yeah, yeah.
and
Correct.
he speaks these things like he says, now you are seeing me, now you are the king, I'm the whatever,
Exactly.
like
Exactly.
this person like is carrying you around. But if I look at it from a bigger perspective,
Yeah,
in
long
another
term.
state, long term perspective, you are the person carrying me, I'm the king, that kind of thing. And like, so I think that's when he starts talking like in this very like
Philosophical way. Philosophical.
philosophical way, and then Raugana is like, his mind is completely like, blown to that, to that,
Right, right. Yeah.
to that level in one sense and all stuff. So, because in his mind, he's at this position, and Jadabharata is in like this position. So Jadabharata is supposed to be the less privileged person,
Sure.
whereas the king is supposed to be like the person in the highest position, like a higher position than
Yeah.
him.
Yeah.
And he's like, in one sense, telling him that look, you're in a low position. You have to do this if you want to, like if you want to live. Basically, if you want to live, you have to
You
do
have.
these things. You have to do
Yeah.
this stuff, basically. So Jarabha is not phased by that sort of, that kind of thing, that threat
Approach of
or
attitude. Yeah.
what's gonna happen to him. You're talking about time when people were just getting killed just like that, simply like so like so if he's not worried about dying or anything like that, so he's just like, and it tells him very straightforward, like like now you may be the king, I am this. In long term, like I'll be this and you're that.
Right.
Like and all these, and the body is just an instrument, and he starts talking about the glories of Vishnu, and I mean Krishna, and the supreme personality of Godhead and all that. And so then that's when, like so in that moment you understand, like you kind of question like who's the person who's like privileged and not privileged in this particular situation.
Sure. It depends
Who
on yeah,
depends on the,
which person, which angle you look at it, isn't it?
yeah, like
Sure.
who's like who's saying that this person is like more privileged and that person is like less privileged. It
For
all
sure.
depends on like yeah, it all depends on circumstance, and it all depends on also it's a lot of projection that goes into the other side of what somebody else thinks that is um that they are superior in a position and that person is inferior, and
Yeah.
yeah. So,
Actually, also, it links up with your earlier question when you said, materially less privileged people. Okay, but materially highly privileged people also need spirituality. They may
mm,
be spiritual paupers. They may be loaded with cash, but they may be spiritual paupers. So it depends. Therefore, in ISKCON, they go out of their way to also cultivate. It's not just for donations, to give some wake-up call even to people rolling in cash now. It's not just to collect donations. All the spiritual leaders hobnob with the Ambanis, and you would see them at these
mm.
private functions. You would see Sadhguru there, you will see maybe Radhanath Swami there
Radhanath Swami was there, yeah, with
at one of these
Gauranga Prabhu.
Ambani,
Yeah,
some recent
yeah.
Ambani stuff. But the point is that, yeah, one side of it you may think it brings the cash, but it also, by giving association and maybe some guidance, they also need, by their past karma and their activities in this life. Okay, materially they are highly privileged, but spiritually they may be having a very dark future. How do we know if they have used up all their pious credit and the wealth they got this time? Once they die, how do we know where they are heading and what kind of birth they are going to take? One doesn't know at all.
Yeah.
So, and like you gave this good example of Rahugana and this Jada Bharat shadow example, a very weak kind of shadow example from the material platform. Sometime back, the story was doing the rounds on WhatsApp that, Narayana Murthy, Infosys wife Sudha Murthy,
Yeah.
she's kind of got a presence, she is pleasant, and she narrates stories. So she was supposed to be waiting in some line for some airline to get clearance, and the stewardess or the ground hostess who was clearing, I think, treated her very badly because she was this old grey-haired lady in some simple crumpled salwar kameez, not some boutique piece from Ritu Kumar or Kapoor or whatever. And so this totally uninformed, immature, I think, dumbed her down in some way and said, "Where is your boarding card?" Or, "You don't have a boarding card, you can't come here." Not knowing that she's the Infosys. And I think Sudha Murthy talked very firmly and clearly, politely, but I don't remember the exact details. So definitely it is like, uh, this whole idea that materially less privileged people, I think even the Bible has it, that blessed are the poor because theirs is the kingdom of heaven. But why should they automatically get the kingdom of heaven just because they are materially, the spiritually less privileged are in far greater danger. They
Mm.
may not have uncomfortable lives, but they're in far greater danger in the long-term picture. What kind of birth they will take, or what horrible things they will do and squander away all their pious credit, we don't know.
We'll go
So
to the
that,
last. We can
yeah,
go to the last question. I know it's like already time, maybe.
yeah. What's the last question?
Uh, the last one is like I believe that I can only practice Krishna Bhakti in the comfort of my own home. I
Right.
am happy advancing, however much without devotee association. Is that bad?
So there are plenty of cases like that, but one must be honest enough. If one needs that association, to go and get it. It shouldn't become a hard and fixed rule, that I don't at all want to associate with devotees. That is not such a good thing, because in isolation, one can come under a lot of misconceptions, and the misconceptions don't come hit with anything else. The problem is to find the right type of association. The average ISKCON temple or center may not satisfy the little more thinking, inquiring type. It's a problem because there is a whole institutional structure working. They just
Mm.
catch you and then they tell you to get initiated, and then all the politics. This is where it comes from. But the person who is talking like this must be open minded enough that if and when Krishna arranges for some association for him to come, he should be willing to open the door and accept it. And not
Mm.
just say, "I'm okay on my own in my own house and I will make whatever advancement." Okay,
This is
one
like
must be open and flexible. Yeah.
my situation only. Only thing is
Yes,
that in my like I have not I
I
guess the
understand.
thing, yeah, in my case, the it's like like if I had the choice, maybe I would have been, I guess maybe if I could like choose, make a decision between doing this or that, I would probably take maybe I'll probably at least attempt and see how what the experience is like. um but
No,
like
but
we are all conditioned souls, so we
no,
can't.
no. Taking association from devotees doesn't mean you throw up everything and go and live in the temple. That's not what it
Oh,
means. Not at all. It's not just two extremes. In fact, nowadays they don't want anybody to join the temple. It's more and more becoming householders, congregations who just come to the temple once a week or main
pray and then go
festivals.
back and
Yeah,
yeah.
give some donation, do their own private stuff, support the temple in whatever way, spread the, give books, spread the message. But it doesn't mean at all. Now they don't want people in the temple nowadays because it's so many issues are there. It's one is if at a later stage the person who's thrown up everything and joined the temple full time regrets it, then
Hmm.
that person is going to be in a very tough spot. Today's
Yeah,
job market is such that you can't just suddenly rejoin after a few years gap. So people like Radhanath Swami don't encourage it at all. They just tell the person, go back and do your BA and MA and MTech or whatever and do all the regular stuff. And that if you're really sure after some 5 6 years, consider it. Because we've had these crises. Someone
that's
then
actually
started, yeah, go
that's
on.
that's sorry to interrupt you actually.
Yeah,
The but that's actually a very good approach, I would say, because
yeah.
the thing is, like on one hand, like you'll improve, I guess, maybe the quality of how the institution is run, and you'll improve the quality, like you'll improve the people that are already there, they will improve. And in one sense, the message also becomes much better when you're spreading it out. Sure, you won't get, people will be less, will get lesser and lesser, but the quality becomes better. And then, at a certain point, maybe you can then start focusing on trying to get more people in, or whatever and all that stuff.
Absolutely.
Or what.
Actually, reading all these stories and books about the early days of ISKCON might have created the impression in your mind that joining ISKCON and being serious means you throw up everything and join. Because in Prabhupada's
Yeah.
time, it was like that. You threw up
Mm.
everything and moved into the temple. Then there's been a huge shift, especially in India, where it's more congregational, meaning devotees who are part of regular society, they have jobs, they are housewives, they have children, they're getting married, they have everything normal happens. They just come and congregate at the temple either only for the 5 major festivals in a year or every Sunday program. And then they support and there's an exchange in whatever way and they try to practice. But
I
Radha Swami, from the beginning, he was very much stressing quality. So he started the Chaupati temple with when he had to kind of clean it up. Earlier, the earlier leader had made a big mess and gone. With very few, and I think there were just 3 4 IIT graduates who were very serious. They are with him even today. They never regretted their choice. And then once, like you said, he was able to maintain proper standards and send out the message that anybody and everybody is not welcome here. Those who are trying to run away from the material world or got slapped or kicked, they are not welcome here. This is hard, this is austere, these are the standards. So now he has like all his temples have, at least that's what I hear, that they have a certain standard. On the contrary, in Mayapur, the Bengali temperament, it's very different. It's more laid back, inertia, lazy, easygoing. So hordes of people join. Sometimes they are from backgrounds where opportunities were not available. They were too lazy to face the task of how to find a job, what to select, etc. And they've been brought up being men, very pampered by the Bengali mom, the mother, and all love and everything. So they can't face. So somehow they get involved with Mayapur ISKCON, and Mayapur ISKCON being a huge project always needs more and more people. But you can see that the mood is not at all a serious mood. They may go through the rigors. Some of them are very serious and do a lot of austerities and build departments. They may go through the rigors. They're up in the morning. They are chanting their round. They are there for the Mangalarati temple 4:30. But deep down, nothing much else is happening. They quickly fall into this politics and you scratch my back, I scratch yours, turn a blind eye, lose all your integrity, honesty. Just keep quiet and don't irritate anybody. Just nod your head. It's a very depressing situation at one level, you know. So just that being serious about ISKCON doesn't mean you throw up everything and move into the temple. Not at
Yeah.
all.
So
Okay.
I saw that like in the actually like when I went to the ISKCON Bangalore temple, I saw that the people that were there, like all the people who were coming and offering prayers, they were like sitting. Um, I think they had been given some type of maybe VIP access or something like that, and
Yeah.
they've been they could sit like the deity was there, and then there was like a gap, and then there was like a place where you could stand and pray to the deity
Right.
from there.
Right. Yeah.
So in that gap between the people and the deity, there was like this sitting area or something, and like you could sit on the floor, and then you could like offer the prayers to the deity, and like the I think people who maybe are just who are maybe donate to the temple, or people who are like who maybe regularly coming to the temple, I could see them sitting on the like they were there most of the time,
Right. Right.
and even the devotee who I met there was telling me like that yeah, this is just for people who are like who are regular and who are coming here for a lot of the times, and the people who are in the queue. So when I met him, he said, why are you in the queue, come here. And then I said, I don't know, I just came. I messaged him, and then I came there, and then he said, okay, then you come. uh, yeah, so that's what happened basically, like.
So are you meaning that it's very commercialized? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, like
Yeah.
I mean that's I guess maybe compared to maybe other ISKCON centers, maybe it must be like more
See,
commercialized.
Bangalore ISKCON is a huge financial success and it's a one-man show. And
Okay.
we hear that even the pujari and the cooks get huge salaries and are driven to the temple and back to their homes in Mercedes cars. I don't know how much of this is true. So that one-man show, they're naming no names. It's a huge success financially and otherwise. It's commercialized the whole experience, but it seems the public love it. Whole of India loves it. The prime ministers and visiting heads of state head there. It's a
They
but
they have I would say like yeah, it is commercialized in Med because they have like everything is the it's very clean for sure. It's a very clean temple, and good architecture. They've got marble. Everything is very good.
hill
And
temple
even the system of how they manage so many people coming in, that system also is like
very efficient.
very efficient, very good system actually. I remember going into the temple that day, and if there is like signs everywhere where to park your
Right,
scooter,
right.
where like from where you park your scooter, where do you go first? You go and put your footwear,
Chapel.
and even
Yeah.
in the footwear also, there's a massive area where you can just put your footwear, and there's like many people working there to make sure that your footwear is safe. And then from there are signs telling you, okay, first go to this Aarti, do this, go to this deity first, then go to that. Like so, like that, it's like everything is like it's guiding you, and then it takes you to the main deity hall.
Chapel.
And then when you're there, then there's like next to the main deity, like there's like Krishna, Balram, Radha, Krishna, I think.
Huge altar.
Yeah. And then right next to the left side, there's like a bookstall. There's a bookshop basically. And so
Right.
there you can like buy books, and there are people who are buying books, and there are people who are just sitting there and chanting and doing that. And yeah,
See, it's a huge success. At one level, one has to give it the efficiency. And like I said, it's all the doing of one person, one man. This
one person.
Madhusudan Nair, he is Madhu Pandit Das. He is huge, Malayali. He is hugely successful and obviously he's empowered, otherwise he wouldn't be able to do anything like this. But the average conditioned soul, common person and the dignitaries, for them this is a great attraction. So that is a service. But if you are a serious spiritual speaker, after a while you will find things that don't really appeal to you. Meaning, if you are spiritually a questioner, they will convince you at the level of debate and discussion. but
Yeah, but they
nothing
own
is happening at the level of the heart. It's
the
all
heart.
money and efficiency and mechanized
Run
food
like a
being.
business. Like,
Yeah, it's run like a business. Exactly.
is it more like prosper? Like, is it more commercially successful than the Chowpatty temple?
Commercially, it's hard for me because Chowpatty, even when you go there, it's a small temple. It's a small two-story Jaipuri style sandstone structure. They have no place to grow. All sides they've got like it's Bombay. You see? So, but I wouldn't say it is commercially less successful because they have huge donors. Then they have this huge Govardhan Eco Village project, which is under Chowpatty. They have the Bangalore Hill Temple. This Hare Krishna Hill is more visible.
Hmm.
It's just all in one place and it's visible and it's more in the news. It's more commercially attractive. But Chowpatty is not stressing commercial success as the main goal. It is actually stressing devotee care, proper etiquette, training of devotees according to their gender, nature, so many other good things. How to do proper deity worship. They allow the ladies also to become pujaris once a week. Lot of things are being attended to, and side by side I think commercially enough money is coming in
Yeah,
because
because Radhanath Swami's influence and
and
like,
Bombay, and also
yeah,
Bombay, in
Bombay, yeah, yeah.
Bombay people have more money. It's even Kochi, they say there are the North Indian cosmopolitan willing to give money for ISKCON centers. Trivandrum, it's a very big issue problem because we have basically the secretariat and the politicians and the legislative assembly, and they're not people with this spiritual inclination and least of all money to give to support projects. So okay,
Yeah.
so hope that
But
helped. And shall we?
yeah, thank you so much for answering the questions. And yeah, you are like you obviously did a very good job
Yeah, I'm
answering
glad to
everything.
hear. Yeah,
Like,
and if
yeah,
something more comes up, we can always add to it
yeah,
later.
yeah. Sure,
Okay.
sure.
So next class. All right,
Yeah,
next
go to the
Saturday.
next one.
Take care.
Bye, bye, Supriya. Take care. Thanks, bye.